Maya had always been good at disappearing. Not literally, of course, but in every way that mattered when you're 17 and stuck in a building with hundreds of other teenagers who all seemed to know exactly how to exist in the world. She'd perfected her technique over 3 long years at Lincoln High School. Back corner seat, always. Hair down, creating a dark curtain that fell past her shoulders and gave her something to hide behind. Earbuds in during passing periods, even when nothing was playing. Eyes down, steps quick. A ghost in sneakers and oversized hoodies. The teachers knew her name because it appeared at the top of their grade sheets. Straight A's in every subject. Perfect attendance. Homework always turned in early, usually 2 or 3 days before the deadline. But if you asked any of them what Maya's voice sounded like, they'd have to think about it. Maybe they'd remember a whisper here or there, a mumbled here during attendance, but nothing more. Her classmates knew her even less. She was that quiet girl. The weird one who never talked. Some of them probably couldn't pick her out of a lineup. Others had created elaborate stories about her. Maybe she was secretly a genius. Maybe she couldn't speak English well. Maybe she thought she was too good for everyone else. The truth was simpler and sadder than any of their guesses, but Maya never corrected them because that would require speaking up. It was the second week of April when everything started to fall apart. Maya was in her usual spot in English class, tucked into the back corner by the window where she could watch the parking lot and the maple trees that were just starting to bud. Spring was coming, which meant graduation was coming, which meant freedom was coming. Just 8 more weeks and she'd be done with high school. Forever. Ms. Peterson stood at the front of the classroom with that particular look teachers get when they're about to announce something they know students won't like. She was young for a teacher, maybe 28, with red glasses and an endless supply of cardigans. Maya actually liked her because Ms. Peterson never forced her to read aloud or participate in group projects. "All right, everyone, settle down," Ms. Peterson said, waiting for the chatter to die. "I have some important information about your graduation requirements." Maya felt her stomach tighten. She'd checked the requirements 100 times. She had all her credits, all her community service hours. Everything was done. She was safe. "As you know, Lincoln High has always prided itself on preparing students for the real world," Ms. Peterson continued, "and one of the most important real-world skills is public speaking. No, please no. So this year, the school board has added a new requirement for graduation. Each senior must deliver a 5-minute speech in front of their entire senior class." The room erupted. Some students groaned. Others laughed. A few of the more outgoing kids actually seemed excited. Maya felt like she was falling through her chair, through the floor, through the earth itself. 5 minutes, in front of everyone, speaking out loud. On purpose, she couldn't breathe. The room tilted sideways. She gripped the edge of her desk so hard her knuckles went white. I know, Ms. Peterson said over the noise. "But it's not as bad as it sounds. You'll have 8 weeks to prepare. You can choose any topic you want. And I'll be offering after-school workshops to help anyone who needs extra support." 8 weeks. Maya had 8 weeks to do something that felt about as possible as sprouting wings and flying to the moon. The rest of class was a blur. Ms. Peterson kept talking about rubrics and sign-up sheets and suggested topics, but Maya couldn't hear any of it over the roaring in her ears. When the bell rang, she grabbed her backpack and bolted, not caring that she knocked her pencil case onto the floor or that someone called after her. She made it to the bathroom on the 2nd floor, the one hardly anyone used, and locked herself in the far stall. Then she let herself panic. Her breathing came in short, sharp gasps. Her hands shook. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she wouldn't let them fall because once she started crying, she might never stop. This couldn't be happening. She'd been so careful. She'd planned everything. Graduate quietly, go to the state university 40 minutes away where she could commute from home, study library science, and spend her life surrounded by books instead of people. It was a good plan, a safe plan, a plan that didn't involve standing in front of 247 classmates and speaking for 5 entire minutes. Maya pressed her forehead against the cool metal of the stall door and tried to calm down. Maybe she could get a medical exemption. Doctors gave those out for anxiety, right? Or maybe she could switch schools, or get her GED instead, or maybe she could just not graduate. She could repeat senior year. That would be better than giving a speech. But even as she thought it, she knew none of those options would work. Her mom couldn't afford a different school. The GED would break her mother's heart. And repeating senior year, That was just delaying the inevitable. If this was a graduation requirement now, it would still be there next year. She stayed in that bathroom stall until the bell rang for third period. Then she wiped her face, shouldered her backpack, and went to calculus, where she sat in her usual corner and solved equations that made perfect, logical sense unlike the rest of her life. The day dragged on forever. Lunch was the worst. Maya usually sat at the end of a table near the library, eating quickly and reading a book. But today she couldn't focus on the words. Every burst of laughter from the nearby tables made her flinch. All those voices, those confident, easy voices. How did they do it? How did they just open their mouths and let words tumble out without fear or planning, or the crushing weight of everyone's attention? By the time the final bell rang, Maya felt like she'd lived through 3 days instead of one. She walked home because the bus was always too crowded, too loud, too much. The April afternoon was warm, and the walk was only 20 minutes if she cut through the park. Home was a small apartment above a nail salon. The smell of acetone and polish remover was so constant that Maya barely noticed it anymore. She climbed the narrow stairs and let herself in with her key, grateful that her mom wouldn't be home for hours. Rosa worked the afternoon shift at St. Mary's Hospital as a nursing assistant. She'd get home around 11, exhausted and smelling like antiseptic, and Maya would have dinner waiting for her. But that was hours away. Right now Maya was alone, finally blessedly alone. She dropped her backpack by the door and went straight to her room. It wasn't much, barely big enough for a twin bed and a small desk, but it was hers. The walls were covered in postcards of places she'd never been. Paris, Tokyo, Cairo, Sydney. Someday, she told herself. Someday when she was older and braver and didn't feel like her throat was closing up every time a stranger looked at her. Maya pulled out the thing that mattered most, her journal. It was the fourth one she'd filled since starting high school. A simple black notebook, college-ruled, nothing fancy. But inside those pages was everything she couldn't say out loud. 3 years of observations and thoughts and feelings and stories. She wrote every single day, sometimes for hours. She wrote about the boy in her history class who fell asleep every afternoon because he worked the night shift at his dad's gas station. She wrote about the girl who always wore long sleeves, even in summer. She wrote about the teacher who hid in his classroom during lunch and ate alone. She wrote about the janitor who hummed old songs while he worked. She saw everything because no one ever noticed her watching. Maya opened to a fresh page and stared at it. Then she wrote 4 words that felt like a confession and a curse and a prayer all at once. I have to speak. She stared at those words for a long time. Then she closed the journal and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling with its water stain shaped like a cloud. 8 weeks, 5 minutes. 247 people watching her. It was impossible. But somehow, some way, she was going to have to find a way to do it. Because the alternative was giving up on everything she'd worked for, and Maya Torres might be quiet, but she'd never been a quitter. The panic attack started 3 days later. Maya was in chemistry class, sitting at her lab station in the back when it hit. One moment she was copying notes about molecular compounds, and the next her heart was racing so fast she thought it might explode. Her vision narrowed. Her hands went numb. She couldn't pull air into her lungs no matter how hard she tried. She stumbled out of class without asking permission, ignoring Mr. Chen calling after her. The hallway was empty and echoing. She made it to the bathroom and collapsed against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the cold tile floor, gasping like a fish out of water. It took 15 minutes for her breathing to slow. When she finally felt steady enough to stand, she splashed cold water on her face and looked at herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin. She looked like she was being haunted. Maybe she was. Haunted by the ghost of the person she was supposed to become in 8 weeks. That night she couldn't eat dinner. Her mom heated up leftover chicken and rice, but Maya just pushed it around her plate while Rosa told her about a difficult patient and a rude doctor. Maya nodded in the right places and made small sounds of acknowledgement, but she wasn't really there. You feeling okay, mija? Rosa asked, her dark eyes sharp with concern. Not much got past Maya's mother. Just tired, Maya said. Which wasn't exactly a lie. She was tired. Bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. She'd been tired for 3 years. Tired from the constant effort of being invisible. Tired from carrying around all the words she never spoke. Rosa reached across their small kitchen table and squeezed Maya's hand. Her fingers were rough from years of washing and sanitizing, but her touch was gentle. "Don't stay up too late with your homework." Maya promised she wouldn't, even though she knew she'd be awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, staring at her ceiling and trying not to think about speeches. The attacks kept coming, one in the cafeteria, one during PE, one while she was walking home through the park. Each time, the same racing heart, the same frozen lungs, the same feeling of falling through space. Maya started avoiding the places where they happened, which meant she was avoiding more and more of her life. She stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria and started eating in the library. She forged a note to get out of PE. She took a different route home that added 20 minutes to her walk but avoided the park. Her world was shrinking, getting smaller and tighter, a cage that kept closing in. 2 weeks passed. Maya got thinner. The circles under her eyes got darker. She moved through school like a shadow of a shadow, barely there at all. It was Rosa who finally broke through. Maya came home one Tuesday afternoon to find her mother sitting at the kitchen table, still in her scrubs from work. She should have been sleeping. She worked the night shift now, which paid a little better, and she usually slept until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. "Sit down," Rosa said, not angry, not demanding. Just firm in that way mothers can be when they know something is very wrong. Maya sat. Her backpack slid off her shoulder and hit the floor with a thud. "What's going on?" Rosa asked. "And don't tell me nothing. You're not eating. You're not sleeping. I hear you pacing in your room at night. Talk to me." Maya opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The words felt stuck, trapped behind her teeth like they always were. But this was her mom. If she couldn't talk to her mom, who could she talk to? "I have to give a speech," she finally said. Her voice came out small and broken. "For graduation. In front of everyone. 5 minutes. And I can't, Mom. I physically cannot do it." Rosa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "When I came to this country, I was 16. Maya knew this story. She'd heard it before. But something in her mother's voice made her listen differently this time. "I came alone," Rosa continued. "On a bus, then another bus, then walking. 3 days. When I got to the border, they asked me questions in English, and I didn't understand any of it. I was so scared I couldn't even cry. I just stood there frozen, like my voice had been stolen." She looked down at her hands, those strong, capable hands that had changed bandages and held hands and caught babies and saved lives. They almost sent me back. But then a woman, an immigration officer, she spoke Spanish. She helped me. And you know what she told me? She said, "You came all this way. Don't stop now just because you're scared. Fear is just a feeling. It can't actually stop you unless you let it." Rosa looked up at Maya. "I was pregnant with you. Did I ever tell you that part?" Maya shook her head. This was new. 4 months pregnant. "Your father was already gone. My family had disowned me. I had nothing. Just you growing inside me. And I was so afraid. Afraid I couldn't learn English. Afraid I couldn't find work. Afraid I'd fail you before you were even born." She got up and left the room. Maya heard her rummaging in her bedroom closet. When she came back, she was holding a photograph in a frame. Maya had seen it before, hanging on the wall in her mother's room, but she'd never really looked at it closely. In the photo, Rosa stood at a podium, much younger, maybe 21 or 22. She was holding a certificate. Behind her was an American flag. She was smiling, but even in the faded photo you could see her hands shaking where they gripped the podium. "My citizenship ceremony," Rosa said softly. "They made me give a speech. Just 2 minutes, but it felt like 2 hours. See my hands? I was shaking so bad I thought I'd drop the microphone. I thought I'd throw up. I thought I'd pass out." She set the photo down in front of Maya. "But I did it. Not because I was brave. Not because I wasn't afraid. I did it because I had to. Because you deserved a mother who had citizenship, who could vote, who had rights. You gave me a reason to be brave." Maya stared at the photo, at her mother's young face, at those trembling hands, at that determined smile. "I'm not saying it's easy," Rosa said. "Fear is real. Your fear is real. But you're stronger than you think, mija. You always have been." That night, Maya lay in bed and thought about her mother walking across deserts and borders with a baby in her belly. She thought about her standing at that podium, shaking but speaking. She thought about all the silent courage it took to build a life in a country where you didn't speak the language, where you didn't know the rules, where everything was strange and scary. If her mom could do that, Could Maya give one 5-minute speech? She still didn't know. But for the first time in 2 weeks, she felt something other than pure terror, something small and fragile, something that might possibly be hope. The next morning, Maya made a decision. She couldn't do this the way other people would do it. She couldn't just wing it or be naturally confident. She needed a plan, a strategy, step-by-step instructions for how to become someone who could speak in front of 247 people without dying. She opened her journal to a fresh page and wrote at the top, "Operation Find My Voice." Then she sat there, pen hovering, not sure what to write next. How did you teach yourself to speak when you'd spent 3 years perfecting the art of silence? She thought about the things that terrified her most. Being looked at. Being heard. Being judged. Being laughed at. Being visible. The list was long and depressing. But then she thought about what her mother had said. Fear is just a feeling. It can't actually stop you unless you let it. Maya started writing. Small steps. Tiny manageable steps. Things that scared her but wouldn't kill her. Week 1. Answer one question in class. Just one. Raise her hand and speak 3 words. That was it. Week 2. Join a club. Just show up. She didn't have to talk. Just be there. Week 3. Read something out loud. A sentence. A paragraph. Anything. She kept writing until she had 8 weeks mapped out. 8 weeks of small, terrifying steps that would hopefully, possibly lead her to a place where she could stand in front of everyone and speak for 5 minutes without passing out. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. And something was better than nothing, which was all she'd had before. Maya looked at the words on the page. Then she read them again. Then a third time. They didn't stop being scary, but they started to feel possible. Barely possible, but possible. She closed the journal and picked up the photo of her mother that Rosa had left on her desk. Young Rosa, shaking but standing. Afraid but speaking. Alone but surviving. Okay, Maya whispered to the photo, to her mother, to herself. Okay, I'll try. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a guarantee. It was just the smallest possible commitment. The tiniest step forward. But for Maya Torres, who had spent 3 years stepping backward into shadows, it felt like a revolution. She set the photo back down and opened her laptop. Ms. Peterson had mentioned after-school workshops for students who needed extra help with their speeches. Maya had deleted that email immediately because even thinking about it made her want to hide under her bed. But now she pulled up her trash folder and found it again. Workshops every Tuesday and Thursday after school starting next week. Her finger hovered over the reply button for 5 full minutes. Then before she could change her mind, she typed 2 words, "I'm interested," and hit send. The message whooshed away into the digital void. Too late to take it back now. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. She'd just committed to something. Put herself out there. Made herself visible in a small but significant way. She felt like she might throw up. But she also felt something else. Something she barely recognized because she felt it so rarely. Pride. Tiny, fragile, barely there pride. It was a start. Monday morning came too fast. Maya woke up with her stomach in knots because today was the day she'd promised herself she'd start. Week 1 of the plan. Answer one question in class, just one. 3 words, if possible. She could do this. Maybe. Possibly. She had to at least try. History class was second period. Mr. Hendricks was old, probably close to retirement, and he had a teaching style that mostly involved lecturing while students tried not to fall asleep. He asked questions sometimes, but usually the same 3 or 4 students answered, while everyone else stared at their phones under their desks. Maya spent all of first period practicing in her head. If he asks about the civil rights movement, I'll say Rosa Parks. That's 2 words. Simple. Easy. I can say 2 words. But when she got to history class and slid into her usual back corner seat, her confidence evaporated. The room was full of students who'd been speaking their whole lives, who'd never had to plan out sentences in advance or practice saying words in the bathroom mirror. How did they make it look so easy? Mr. Hendricks started his lecture about the 1960s. Maya tried to focus, but her heart was already racing. Her hands were sweating. Her throat felt tight. This was stupid. She couldn't do this. She should just forget the whole thing. But then she thought about her mother shaking hands on that podium. Fear is just a feeling. Now, Mr. Hendricks said, pausing in his lecture, who can tell me what significant event happened on December 1st, 1955? Maya's hand was halfway up before her brain caught up with what her body was doing. Then panic hit. What was she doing? Everyone was going to turn around and look at her. Everyone was going to wonder who she was and why she was talking. But Mr. Hendricks was already looking at her with surprise and something like delight. Yes, Miss Torres? Do you have something to share? Every head in the class turned. 26 pairs of eyes, all on her. Maya felt her face burning. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Say it. Just say it. 2 words. That's all, Rosa Parks, Maya said, except it came out as barely a whisper, so quiet she wasn't sure anyone heard her. I'm sorry. Could you speak up? Mr. Hendricks asked, not unkindly. Maya wanted to melt into the floor, to disappear, to have never raised her hand in the first place. But she'd come this far. She'd gotten the words out once. She could do it again. Rosa Parks, she repeated louder this time, still shaky but audible, refused to give up her seat on the bus. That was more than 2 words. That was a whole sentence. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Mr. Hendricks smiled. A real, genuine smile. Excellent point, Maya, that's exactly right. The Montgomery bus boycott started because of her courage, her refusal to accept injustice. Thank you for contributing. He turned back to the board and continued his lecture. The other students turned back around. Just like that, it was over. The moment had passed. Maya was invisible again, except she didn't quite feel invisible anymore. Her hand was still shaking where it rested on her desk. Her heart was still racing. But she'd done it. She'd spoken in class, out loud on purpose, and the world hadn't ended. No one had laughed. No one had mocked her. Mr. Hendricks had called it an excellent point. Maya took out her journal and wrote a single sentence. I raised my hand in history class. Looking at those words on paper made it real, made it true. She'd taken the first step. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maya was exhausted, like she'd run a marathon instead of speaking 8 words out loud. But it was a good kind of tired. The kind that came from doing something hard instead of running away from it. That night, she checked her email and found a response from Ms. Peterson about the speech workshops. First one was Tuesday after school in room 214. Maya saved the date in her phone and stared at it. Another step. Another small, terrifying step. Tuesday came. Maya went through her classes in a fog of anxiety. The workshop started at 3:30. At 3:15, she stood outside room 214, trying to convince herself to open the door. She could hear voices inside. Other students. People who were probably all more confident than her, more comfortable with speaking. She almost left. Almost turned around and walked away and went home and forgot the whole thing. But then the door opened and Ms. Peterson stood there smiling. Maya, I'm so glad you came. Come on in, we're just getting started. There was no escape now. Maya followed Ms. Peterson into the classroom. 6 other students sat in a circle of desks. Maya recognized most of them. There was Daniel from her English class, a quiet kid who always sat near the front. Lisa from biology, who was smart but awkward. A few others whose names she didn't know. They all looked as nervous as she felt. That helped somehow. She wasn't alone in her fear. All right, everyone, Ms. Peterson said once Maya had found a seat. Welcome to our first workshop. I want to start by saying that public speaking is scary for most people. You're not weird or broken if you find it difficult. Some of the most successful people in the world get nervous before speaking. She talked about techniques, deep breathing, visualization, practice. But the thing that stuck with Maya was something Ms. Peterson said near the end. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for authenticity. People connect with real emotion, with honest words, much more than they connect with a polished performance. After the workshop, Maya walked home slowly, thinking about authenticity. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible, trying to take up as little space as possible. What would it mean to be authentic? To take up space, to be seen? Week 2 of her plan was to join a club. Just show up. She didn't have to talk. Maya had walked past the poetry club meetings a dozen times. They met every Wednesday in the library after school. She'd always been curious but too scared to go in. Poetry was about words, about expression, about putting your feelings out there for everyone to see. It terrified her, which was exactly why she needed to do it. Wednesday afternoon, Maya forced herself to walk into the library at 3:30. A small group of students sat in a circle near the back, maybe 8 or 9 of them. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, was there too, smiling and welcoming. "New face," she said when she saw Maya. "Come join us. We're just sharing some of our favorite poems today. You can just listen if you want." Maya sat in the circle and listened. Students read poems by famous poets and by themselves. Some of the poems were funny. Some were sad. Some were angry. All of them were honest in a way that made Maya's chest ache. When it was her turn in the circle, she just shook her head. "I'm just listening today," she managed to say. "That's perfectly fine," Mrs. Chen said. Listening is part of poetry, too. Maya went back the next Wednesday, and the Wednesday after that. By the 3rd week, she knew everyone's names. She knew that Kevin wrote poems about his grandfather who had Alzheimer's. She knew that Priya wrote about being caught between 2 cultures. She knew that Austin wrote terrible rhyming poems that were actually kind of funny. They started to feel like friends, or at least like friendly acquaintances. People who nodded at her in the halls. People who saved her a seat at poetry club. It was nice. Strange, but nice. By week 3 of her plan, Maya was supposed to read something out loud. The thought made her want to throw up, but she'd come this far. She'd spoken in class. She'd joined a club. She could read something out loud. She decided to start small. A haiku. Just 3 lines. 17 syllables. She could do 17 syllables. Maya spent 2 hours writing and rewriting her haiku. Finally, she had something. Silent for so long, words trapped like birds in a cage learning how to fly. It was simple. Maybe too simple. But it was true. And Miss Peterson had said to aim for authenticity. That Wednesday at Poetry Club, Maya's hands shook as she unfolded the paper where she'd written her haiku. When it was her turn, she almost passed again. Almost said she was just listening today. But Kevin had just shared a beautiful, heartbreaking poem about watching his grandfather forget his own name. And Priya had shared something about feeling invisible in her own family. And if they could be that brave, maybe Maya could be brave too. "I wrote something," Maya said. Her voice was so quiet she wasn't sure anyone heard her. But Mrs. Chen smiled. "We'd love to hear it." Maya read her haiku. The words came out shaky and soft, but they came out. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Maya's face burned. It was stupid. They hated it. She shouldn't have shared it. Then Austin said, "That's beautiful. The birds in a cage thing, that's really powerful." Priya nodded. "I felt that. Like really felt that." Kevin just gave her a thumbs up, but his eyes were kind. Maya folded up her paper and put it away. Her hands were still shaking, but she was smiling. She'd read her words out loud. People had heard her, and they hadn't laughed or mocked or judged. They'd understood. She wrote about it in her journal that night. "I shared my haiku today. People liked it, or at least they didn't hate it." That's something. Week 4 was about talking to someone new, having an actual conversation about something other than schoolwork. This was harder than speaking in class or reading a poem because conversations were unpredictable. You couldn't plan them out. You had to respond in the moment. Maya had a lab partner in chemistry named Ben. They'd been partners all semester, but their conversations had been limited to, "Can you hand me the beaker?" And "What did you get for number 3? He was nice, quiet like her, with dark hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. During their lab one day, Maya decided to try. They were measuring solutions and recording data, and there was a natural pause in the work. "Do you like chemistry?" Maya asked. It was a simple question. Maybe too simple, but it was something. Ben looked surprised that she'd spoken. "It's okay, I guess. I'm more into computers, actually. Coding and stuff." "That's cool," Maya said. Her heart was pounding, but she pushed forward. "What kind of coding?" And just like that, they were having a conversation. Ben told her about a game he was designing. Maya told him about a book she was reading. They talked for the rest of the lab period right up until the bell rang. As Maya packed up her things, Ben said, "This was nice. We should talk more often." Maya nodded, smiling. "Yeah, we should. It was such a small thing." A 10-minute conversation. But for Maya, it felt huge. She'd connected with someone. Not about school or assignments, but about real things. Interests and hobbies and thoughts. By week 5, Maya still felt terrified about the speech. But she also felt something else, stronger, more capable, more real. Each small step built on the last one. Each tiny act of courage made the next one a little easier. She still had 3 weeks until speeches began. 3 weeks to figure out what she wanted to say. 3 weeks to become someone who could stand in front of 247 people and speak her truth. She still didn't know if she could do it. But for the first time, she thought maybe, possibly, she might be able to try. Maya spent the next 2 weeks making progress. Slow, painful progress, but progress nonetheless. She spoke up in class 3 more times. She had lunch with Lisa from the speech workshop. She even volunteered to present her chemistry lab results to the class, though her voice shook the entire time. Her speech was still unwritten. She had pages and pages of false starts in her journal, but nothing felt right. Nothing felt important enough. A speech about overcoming shyness felt too obvious. A speech about her mother felt too personal. A speech about books felt too boring. She had 2 weeks left when everything changed. It was a Monday morning. Maya was running late because she'd stayed up past midnight trying to write her speech and had slept through her alarm. She rushed into school right as the first bell rang and noticed immediately that something was wrong. The hallways were quieter than usual. Groups of students clustered together, talking in hushed voices. Some girls were crying. Maya caught fragments of conversations as she hurried to her locker. I can't believe it. He seemed so happy. His poor family. Maya's stomach clenched. Something bad had happened. Something really bad. She saw Priya from Poetry Club standing with a group of students wiping her eyes. Maya approached hesitantly. What happened? Priya looked at her with red, swollen eyes. You didn't hear? Nathan Mills, he died. Over the weekend. The words didn't make sense at first. Nathan Mills. Maya knew who he was, everyone did. Junior class president. Star of the basketball team. Always smiling, always surrounded by friends. The kind of person who seemed to have everything figured out. What? How? Maya asked. Priya's voice dropped even lower. They're saying he killed himself. Saturday night. His parents found him. Maya felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Nathan Mills. Happy, popular, perfect Nathan Mills. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be true. But the grief on everyone's faces told her it was. School was canceled for the rest of the day. They held an assembly in the gym instead. The principal spoke about resources for students who were struggling. The counselors were available. A crisis hotline number appeared on every screen. Teachers stood against the walls, many of them crying too. Maya sat in the bleachers, numb and shocked. She'd never spoken to Nathan. Had probably never been within 10 feet of him. But his death hit her like a personal loss anyway, because he'd seemed so okay. He'd seemed like he had it all together. And if someone like that could be hurting so badly that they couldn't see a way forward, then what did that mean for the rest of them? The next few days were surreal. School went on, but nothing felt normal. Students walked through the halls like ghosts. Teachers gave easier assignments. Nobody talked about much except Nathan. Everyone had a story, a memory, a moment they'd shared with him. The memorial service was on Thursday. The whole school attended. Maya sat near the back of the auditorium and listened to person after person talk about how wonderful Nathan had been, how kind, how talented, how full of life. But there was something missing from all these speeches, something that made Maya's chest ache. Nobody talked about his pain. Nobody acknowledged that behind that perfect smile, Nathan had been suffering. They were remembering the version of him he'd shown the world, not the version that must have been screaming inside. That night, Maya sat at her desk and stared at her journal. She'd been trying to figure out what to write her speech about for weeks. She'd thought it needed to be something inspiring or educational or impressive. But watching everyone mourn Nathan, watching them celebrate his mask while ignoring his pain, Maya finally understood what she needed to say. She started writing. Not planning or outlining or thinking too hard. Just writing. The words poured out, messy and raw and true. She wrote about being invisible. About spending 3 years watching life happen around her instead of participating in it. About the cage of silence she'd built for herself. But then she wrote about something she'd never quite put into words before. She wrote about what she'd seen while being invisible. All the things people didn't know she'd noticed. The quarterback who flinched every time his dad called him during lunch, whose hand would shake as he answered the phone. The head cheerleader who ate her lunch in her car alone, scrolling through her phone with a blank expression that looked a lot like loneliness. The class clown who made everyone laugh but whose eyes were always sad, like the jokes cost him something to tell. The straight-A student who had a panic attack in the bathroom before every test, throwing up from the pressure her parents put on her. Maya had seen all of it. Every hidden hurt, every masked pain, every perfect smile that didn't reach people's eyes. Because when you're invisible, you become a witness. You see things others miss because they're too busy performing their own roles to notice everyone else's struggles. She wrote about Nathan. About how he'd seemed to have everything but had been carrying something none of them could see. About how maybe if people had looked closer, asked deeper questions, seen past the performance, things might have been different. And then she wrote about her own fear, not just the fear of speaking, but the deeper fear underneath it. The fear of being truly seen. The fear that if people really looked at her, they'd find her lacking, unworthy, not enough. But Nathan's death had taught her something. Being invisible wasn't safe. Hiding wasn't protecting her. It was just another kind of cage, another way of not living. And the saddest part was that while she'd been hiding from being seen, Nathan had been hiding inside of being seen, both of them invisible in different ways, both of them performing their roles so well that nobody knew they were drowning. Maya wrote until 2 a.m. When she finally stopped, she had 7 pages of handwritten notes. Her speech, raw and honest and probably the truest thing she'd ever written. She read it over once and started crying. Not sad tears exactly. Something more complicated. Grief and fear and relief all mixed together. The next morning, Maya went to school with her speech in her backpack. It still needed work. It was too long. Some parts were too personal. Some parts needed better transitions. But the core of it was there. The truth of it was there. She had 1 week left. Ms. Peterson's workshop that Tuesday was focused on dealing with nerves. Maya sat in the circle and listened to other students talk about their fear. Daniel admitted he got so nervous before presentations that he sometimes threw up. Lisa said her hands shook so badly she could barely hold her note cards. Fear is normal, Ms. Peterson said. Even experienced speakers get nervous. The key is not to eliminate the fear but to speak anyway, to let the fear be there but not let it stop you. Fear is just a feeling. Her mother's words echoed in her head. After the workshop, Maya stayed behind. She approached Ms. Peterson's desk nervously. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Of course," Ms. Peterson said, looking up with a warm smile. "When you give a speech, do you ever feel like you're being too honest? Like you're showing people things they don't want to see?" Ms. Peterson was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The best speeches I've ever heard made me uncomfortable. They challenged me, made me think about things I'd rather ignore. That's not a bad thing, Maya. That's what good communication does. It connects us by showing us we're not alone in our struggles." She paused. "Are you worried your speech is too personal?" Maya nodded. "Can I give you some advice? Don't water it down to make other people comfortable. The things we're most afraid to say are usually the things people most need to hear." Maya thought about that all the way home. The things people most need to hear. She spent the weekend revising her speech. She cut it down to 5 minutes exactly. She practiced it out loud in her room, stumbling over words, starting over, trying again. It got a little easier each time, but not much. Monday morning, Ms. Peterson handed out the speech schedule. Maya's name was on it, slotted for Friday afternoon. The last speech of the last day. She had 4 more days. 4 days felt like forever and no time at all. Maya practiced every night. In front of her mirror, recording herself on her phone and forcing herself to watch it back. Out loud while walking through the empty park after dark. Wednesday night, her mother knocked on her door while she was practicing. Maya had been so focused she hadn't heard Rosa come home from work. "Can I hear it?" Rosa asked. Maya's first instinct was to say no. But she'd come this far. She'd done so many scary things already. She could do one more. She read her speech to her mother. All 5 minutes of it. Her voice shook. She missed some words, but she got through it. When she finished, Rosa was crying. "Mija," she said, pulling Maya into a hug. "That was beautiful. And brave. So brave. You don't think it's too much?" Maya asked. "Too honest?" "The world needs more honesty," Rosa said firmly. "The world needs more people brave enough to tell the truth even when their voice shakes. Especially then." Thursday, Maya went through her classes in a fog. Tomorrow she'd have to actually do this. Stand in front of everyone and speak her truth. Part of her still wanted to run, to call in sick, to transfer schools, to do anything except follow through. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at her ceiling, her speech memorized so thoroughly that she could recite it backward. Her whole body felt electric with fear and anticipation. At 3 in the morning, she got up and pulled out her journal. She turned to a blank page and wrote, "Tomorrow I speak. Not because I'm brave, not because I'm not afraid, but because some truths are too important to stay silent about. Because Nathan deserved to be truly seen. Because we all do. Because I'm tired of hiding. Tomorrow I choose to be visible." Friday morning came. Maya put on her favorite shirt, the dark blue one that made her feel a little bit stronger. She ate breakfast, even though her stomach was churning. Her mother hugged her extra tight before she left. "You can do this," Rosa whispered, "and I'll be there watching. Front row." Maya took the bus to school for the first time in weeks, too nervous to walk. The speeches were scheduled for the afternoon in the auditorium. The entire senior class would be there. 47 students plus teachers and staff. The morning dragged by. Maya couldn't focus in any of her classes. She kept running through her speech in her head, terrified she'd forget it, terrified she'd mess it up, terrified of everything. At lunch, she couldn't eat. She sat in the library with her speech notes, reading them over and over even though she had every word memorized. Priya from Poetry Club found her there. "Hey," she said softly, "you ready for this afternoon?" Maya shook her head. "Not even a little bit. Want to know a secret?" Priya sat down next to her. "None of us are ready. We're all terrified. But we're going to do it anyway because that's what brave looks like." Maya managed a small smile. "When did you get so wise?" "I didn't. I'm just really good at pretending." Priya squeezed her hand. "You're going to do great. I know it." At 1:30, the senior class filed into the auditorium. Maya sat in the back row, watching name after name get called. Students walked to the podium, some confident, some nervous, all of them managing to get through their 5 minutes. The speeches were about everything: college plans, sports achievements, thank you messages to parents. Some were funny, some were boring, some were actually pretty good. Maya's heart pounded harder with each name called, each speech finished. She was getting closer and closer to her turn. She could feel her panic rising, that familiar tightness in her chest that meant an attack was coming. She closed her eyes and practiced the breathing techniques from Ms. Peterson's workshop. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Again. 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 Finally, after what felt like hours and seconds all at once, Ms. Peterson walked to the microphone. "Our last speaker today," she said, "is Maya Torres. This was it. No more time. No more preparation. No more delays." Maya stood on shaky legs. The auditorium stretched out before her, row after row of faces. 247 students. Her mother sitting in the very front row, giving her a thumbs up. Ms. Peterson waiting by the stage with an encouraging smile. Maya walked down the aisle. Each step felt impossible. Her note cards were damp with sweat. Her legs felt like they might give out. She could still turn around. She could still run. She could still. But she didn't. She kept walking. One foot in front of the other, all the way to the stage, all the way to the podium. She looked out at all those faces and felt her vision start to tunnel. This was it. She was either going to do this or she was going to pass out. No other options. Maya set her note cards on the podium. Her hands were shaking so badly the cards rattled. She opened her mouth to speak and no sound came out. Then people staring at her, waiting, expecting, watching. Fear is just a feeling. Maya took a breath, then another. She looked out and found her mother's face. Rosa was smiling through tears, her hands pressed together, believing in her daughter even when her daughter couldn't believe in herself, and Maya began to speak. "My name is Maya Torres." Her voice came out cracked and small, barely more than a whisper. The microphone squealed with feedback. Maya flinched, and for a horrible second she thought she might run, just turn around and bolt off the stage and never come back. But she saw her mother in the front row. She saw Ms. Peterson giving her an encouraging nod. She saw Priya and Kevin and Lisa and Ben and all the other people who'd watched her take small, shaky steps toward this moment. She cleared her throat and tried again. My name is Maya Torres, and for 3 years, I've been invisible to most of you. Better, louder, still shaking, but audible. Maya gripped the edges of the podium to keep her hands from trembling so visibly. She looked down at her note cards, but the words were blurry. It didn't matter. She knew this speech by heart. It was written into her bones now. Some of you probably don't even know who I am, Maya continued. I'm the quiet girl, the weird one who never talks, the one who sits in the back corner and never raises her hand. A few weeks ago, I would have told you that's just who I am. Shy, anxious, not built for a world that requires speaking up. The auditorium was completely silent. Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She forced herself to look up from the podium, to actually see the faces watching her. But here's what I've learned while being invisible. When nobody notices you, you notice everything. You become a witness to all the things people don't think anyone else sees. Maya's voice was getting stronger now. The initial terror was still there, thrumming under her skin, but something else was building too, a need to say these words. A need to be heard. I see the football player whose dad calls him during lunch, and how his whole body tenses up when he answers. I see how his hands shake, how his smile disappears, how he looks like he wants to disappear into the floor. A ripple went through the audience, people shifting in their seats. Someone in the third row, was that Chris from the football team? Looked down at his hands. I see the girl who everyone thinks has it all together, Maya continued, her words coming faster now. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect life. But I also see her eating alone in her car, scrolling through her phone with this blank expression that looks a lot like loneliness. Like she's starving for something that has nothing to do with food. More shifting, more recognition. Maya saw students looking at each other, seeing each other differently. I see the person who makes everyone laugh, who's always cracking jokes, always on. But their eyes are sad, like the performance costs them something. Like they're drowning, but they keep smiling because that's what everyone expects. Her voice cracked on that word. Drowning. Because she was thinking about Nathan now. About his perfect smile and his secret pain. 2 weeks ago, we lost someone, Maya said, and her voice went soft. The auditorium seemed to lean forward, everyone suddenly paying complete attention. Nathan Mills, he was everything I'm not. Popular, confident, always surrounded by friends. He seemed so happy, so put together, so perfectly, completely okay. Maya had to stop for a second. Breathe. Push through. But he wasn't okay. And none of us knew. Or maybe some of us suspected, but we didn't ask. We didn't look deeper. We didn't see past the performance to the person underneath. Tears were running down Maya's face now, but she didn't wipe them away. Her hand stayed gripped on the podium like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And I realized something. Nathan and I were both invisible, just in different ways. I was invisible because nobody looked at me. He was invisible because everyone looked at him, but nobody really saw him. We were both hiding, both alone, both terrified of being truly known. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. Maya could see tears on other faces now. Ms. Peterson was crying. Her mother was crying. Students throughout the audience were wiping their eyes. I've spent 3 years being afraid, Maya said. Afraid of being looked at, afraid of being heard, afraid of being judged. Afraid that if people really saw me, they'd find me lacking. Not enough. Not worth their time. She looked out at all those faces. 247 people actually seeing her for the first time. But standing here right now, terrified and shaking and probably about to pass out, I've realized something. Being invisible isn't safe. Hiding doesn't protect us. It just means we go through life never truly connecting with anyone. Never letting ourselves be known, never letting others be known by us. Maya's voice was stronger now, more certain. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something else, something like purpose. We're all wearing masks, she said, all performing our roles, the popular kid, the athlete, the brain, the quiet one, the perfect one. We're so busy maintaining these identities that we forget to be real with each other. We forget to ask the hard questions, to look past the smile and ask, Are you really okay? She paused, letting that sink in. And here's the scariest part. Sometimes we're not just hiding from other people. We're hiding from ourselves, pretending we're fine when we're not, smiling when we're drowning, because we think that's what we're supposed to do, because we're afraid that if we're honest about our struggles, people will think we're weak, or broken, or too much. Maya thought about her panic attacks, her sleepless nights, her years of silence, all of it born from fear that her truth was too much for the world to handle. But you know what I think? Maya's voice rose, filling the auditorium. I think the world needs more honesty, more realness, more people brave enough to say I'm struggling or I'm scared or I don't have it all figured out.